Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Shlomovich, and this is The Confident Vegan. On this channel, you'll find insightful interviews with inspiring vegans, practical tips for plant-based living, and empowering conversations about what it really means to live in alignment with your values. I am also the co-host of That Vegan Morning Show with Kimberly Winters of the Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. You can start your day the vegan way and watch us live every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern on YouTube at That Vegan Morning Show. Today, my special guest is Gail Eisnitz. Gail has been vegan for 2 decades and winner of the Albert Schweitzer Medal for Outstanding Achievement in Animal Welfare. Gail is Chief Investigator for the Humane Farming Association and author of the new memoir, Out of Sight, an undercover investigator's fight for animal rights and her own survival. Eisnitz and her first book, Slaughterhouse, the shocking story of greed, neglect, and inhumane treatment inside the U.S. meat industry, were the driving force behind a front-page exposé in the Washington Post that resulted in an annual multi-million-dollar congressional appropriation for enforcement of the Humane Slaughter Act, the first funding ever allocated for a law that had been on the books for more than 40 years. Welcome, Gail.
Hi, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be with you.
I am so happy to be with you too. I have been looking forward to this interview. I've been reading, oh, here you go. You can see it here. I've been reading the book and I'm like almost halfway through, and it is such a page turner. And not only because it reads like a novel, and I love that there's bite-sized chapters because as a busy person, like I'm able to like read and like stop at a good place and I can pick it up throughout the day and read more. And it's just so insightful. Like I've been learning a lot. I started my vegan journey for health and committed for the animals. But then as the more I've been building my platform for the confident vegan, realized wanted to learn more and share more about the atrocities that happen in animal agriculture. So I've only been learning like in depth about it, I would say within the past like 2, 3 years, like really diving in. And just when you think you've learned everything there is to learn about this industry, there's like more horrible things that I learned that I didn't realize that were in here. But this book is not only about that, it's also about your journey of survival, dealing with a disease that you were having a neurological condition and you weren't sure what was going on, and you went to all these medical professionals who were giving you every single test under the sun. And you also went through breast cancer at the age of 35 and doing all of these things and still doing this really hard, difficult work for someone who's healthy. It would be difficult to do. So I can't even imagine what that must have been like. And I'm going to ask you more all about that, but I just wanted to share with you just some of my thoughts as I've been reading your book.
Great. I'm so happy that you're finding it to be a page turner because that was the purpose, to get people reading. And so it's not like a litany of horrors. There's a storyline that makes people want to go to the next chapter.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is a great book for me to recommend to non-vegan friends and family who might be opposed to reading those types of things, but because it reads like a novel and there's your inspiring story of what you had to overcome personally, like I feel like it's a great way to help people learn in another way.
Right. Well, wait till you get to the climax of the book.
Well, I will email you as soon as I finish it, and I'll let you know once we're done. So, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule. First thing I always ask my guests is, what is your vegan story?
Well, it's a very simple story. I was working as a farm animal cruelty investigator, and every animal that I investigated, I stopped eating. It's that simple. It's like
Hmm.
as I learned about what cattle were going through, I stopped eating beef. As I learned what chickens were going through, I stopped eating chicken, eggs and dairy and pork. And yeah, it's that simple. It's just like when you find out what's going on behind the scenes of slaughterhouses and factory farms, you certainly don't want to support it. So it's that
Yeah.
easy. Yeah,
Yeah. And there's so much that's hidden from from society. And before I went vegan, I knew what animal products were, but it was, the cognitive dissonance that we all have because we're raised to think, well, this is just the way it is, right? It's normal. If you're not doing this, then you're abnormal. And then all the misinformation about nutrition that's out there. And so, uh, yeah, it's really horrifying how much is hidden. Also, the corruption that happens behind the scenes, because there is a lot of corruption that happened that you uncovered as well. And yeah, it's just really frightening to know about the things that have happened then and, things that are continuing to happen. And but you've certainly done a huge contribution in providing that knowledge and education out there. Before we continue with the other questions I have for you to share about your journey and the book, can you share a little bit more about your work with the Humane Farming Association?
sure. Yeah, I'm chief investigator at Humane Farming Association. I've been there for 35 long years. It's a
Wow.
great organization. I left the Humane Society of the United States under really bad conditions because my former supervisor there wouldn't let me expose the violations I was documenting. And just to throw out a little tidbit without giving out too much information, he's now serving a life sentence in federal prison. So I had to leave the HSUS in order to continue doing my slaughterhouse and factory farm work. But the Humane Farming Association is an organization that has about 300,000 members. We do all sorts of anti-cruelty investigations, like are described in the book. We were known for our national media campaigns, like we ran ads in national newspapers and magazines about the national veal boycott, and we've seen an 89% drop in veal production. So that's a
Wow.
real success. We're also the first organization to get legislation introduced in legislation for farm animals introduced in Congress and in state legislatures. And we're very active in litigation, suing abusers and using legal work to stop atrocities from happening. And the best part of HFA that a lot of people might not know is that it operates a 7,000-acre farm animal refuge. It's the largest farm animal sanctuary in the country, and it's
Wow.
so wonderful. We have 1,000 animals there right now. It's permanent placement for the animals. They live there, they live their lives out there. And we have everything from emus and chickens to pigs and goats and burros and cattle and a little bit of everything. And they're so happy there. They're all animals that were seized as a result of cruelty cases. So
Hmm.
they're living their best lives up there right now. It's just wonderful. So that's a
Wow.
little bit about HFA.
I'm so glad to hear that. And yeah, it sounds like you're doing such incredible work there. And I'm sure it's not easy work either. What are some of the most challenging moments that you've experienced during your investigations?
I think some of the most challenging moments have to do with federal regulators and prosecutors and the media,
Hmm.
trying to get the incidents that I've documented of violations out to the public. I worked with ABC, NBC, and CBS, all U.S. networks, and they came out in the field with me, interviewed my workers, got videotape, and then they all killed the story based on the fact that it was too disturbing and people might
Mm.
change the channel. So that was extremely frustrating. I worked with prosecutors. Well, I tried to work with prosecutors. Um, and regulators like the Secretary of Agriculture did a massive cover-up at the largest slaughterhouse in the southeastern United States, which we were able to get shut down because of our work. But and the governor of Washington impaneled a task force to look into another slaughterhouse where they were skinning and dismembering cows while they were still fully conscious. And he did his task force did the most incredible cover up. They said despite the fact that we had videotape of cows being skinned and dismembered alive and videotape of 100 other violations, they said that we had manufactured the evidence and we had orchestrated the information for fundraising purposes. So it's been very challenging because there aren't many TV networks or prosecutors that are willing to help. And with regard to attorneys general, we worked with in at least 6 states providing massive evidence of horrendous violations. And in one case, we provided still photos, videotaped evidence, 800 pages of worker testimony, and the Attorney General's office still refused to take action because they have prosecutorial discretion and they're captured by big business, big ag, just like the networks, the TV networks are captured by corporate agribusiness. So that's been the most challenging part is trying to get the information out. Plus, I was fighting with my former employer to try to get the information out, and he wouldn't let me do it. And so, as I said, he's in jail now, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you share some of your experiences of that in the book, and I was amazed in how you kept going because those are not easy things to have to navigate, not to mention the nature of the work and all of these different things, and yet you managed to still continue to do it successfully.
Well, I didn't have a choice. I knew that the hogs were being immersed into the scalding tank by the thousands, fully conscious, and I knew that the cows were being skinned and dismembered by the thousands, and you can't sleep at night. You
Yeah.
can't just say, well, there's nothing I can do about this because nobody else was doing anything about it. So I figured I just kind of had to.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the networks didn't want to broadcast that, right? Because it's too disturbing. And meanwhile, right, it's like the ignorance is bliss, right? People don't want to know what the reality is behind the food on their plate, right? There's a lot more to it than you just go to the grocery store and it's neatly packaged, right? There's a whole horrific experience that led to that product to be packaged.
Right. Plus, the networks are sponsored by these big corporate agribusiness companies.
Yeah.
And so that was another concern of theirs, I'm sure. But HBO, which had some guts, did do a fantastic story for us, as did the Washington Post. Incredible stories. So there is media out there that's willing to address these subjects. You just have to find them.
Yeah, and then you took that research that you did have, and that was able to help you create your book Slaughterhouse. So in a way, you're able to take things into your own hands and find another way to share that with the world.
Well, that's what happened is when I left the Humane Society and I went to work for Humane Farming Association, one of the first things that my new supervisor, the founder of the organization, said is, if we can't get this information out there because nobody will expose it, then why don't you write a book? I thought that was a great idea. So I did. And that book was really successful. It turned thousands of people vegan.
Wow. Yeah, I would like to read it at some point as well because as my work as an educator, I'm always looking for more resources that can help me educate others as well as pass along to others who are open to learn more about these things in depth. Um, what are the surprising facts that you uncovered during your research?
Um, how many hours do you have? Everything was surprising, Jennifer. Everything. One of the first surprising things was the line speeds at which the slaughterhouses operate. I mean, just until recently, chickens were killed at a rate of 140 birds per minute. And now
Hmm.
they've increased that to 175 birds per minute. That's 3 birds a second. One of the slaughterhouses I visited in North Carolina kills 35,000 pigs a day. And I always try to make the analogy, you couldn't disassemble 35,000 toasters in a day, no less kicking, squealing pigs, that are fighting because they're not properly rendered unconscious. So line speeds are like so fast. It's virtually not possible to ensure that the animals are properly handled and rendered unconscious as is required by the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. Another thing that was interesting was that the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act have been on the books 43 years when I was doing my first investigations. And what we found out when I did a story with the Washington Post was that the Congress was outraged and they decided to fund it for the first time. It had never had a dollar put toward enforcement. It was on the books
Wow.
for 43 years and it was had no money to enforce it. So that was quite a surprise to realize that it was going totally unenforced. Another surprise is that 55 years ago, we slaughtered 10 billion animals annually in the world. And today we slaughter 10 billion animals annually in the United States alone, with 82 billion animals killed in the world, land animals. That doesn't include fish, each year. So that's pretty surprising. I found out the way animals are raised, in addition to how they're slaughtered, and everything is shocking. I mean, the way piglets are treated and gestating pigs are kept in cages. Most people know that gestation crates, 400 to 600 pound animals are put in gestation crates that are 2 feet wide and 7 feet long. Some of the crates that we saw were only 19 inches wide.
Oh
And
my
these
goodness.
animals get sores on their faces and their shoulders and their backs and their legs and their hindquarters from constant contact with the bars. And they engage in stereotypies, which are what you see in people who suffer from clinical psychiatric disorders. They do head bobbing and air chewing and bar biting because they basically go crazy. They're
Yeah.
living above the waste pits, on concrete floors, and they get serious respiratory problems, foot problems, arthritis. They collapse in their crates and they die of dehydration and starvation, or they're still alive and they're dragged out of their crates and put onto dead piles. And the dead trucks just come every day and pick them up like it's nothing. Take them to rendering and they go into animal feed and fertilizer. But in one case where we were able to get figures, numbers, this one corporation was its dead boxes were overflowing, so there were dead animals littering the ground, and the
Hmm.
Department of Environmental Protection thought that that was going to contaminate the groundwater, so they cited them for environmental reasons. So the company had to give up the number of dead animals it had that year. In one year, these are dead animals that were killed or died on the farm, not slaughtered. They had 420,000 dead pigs in one year in one corporation. And then there's like the thumping or packing of piglets, where the producers pick up the piglets by their hind legs and whirl them over their shoulders and smash them headfirst to the concrete floor. That's called thumping or packing, the acronym for pound against concrete. And the American Veterinary Medical Association thinks that's great because the AVMA is in bed with the meat industry. And that's just pigs. I mean, I could talk about poultry. I mean, chickens are raised, chickens that are raised for meat or broilers are kept in extremely crowded conditions, 50,000 birds in a shed, and they're genetically bred for massive appetites. You have a 6.2 pound broiler at 6 to 7 weeks old, which is the age that they're slaughtered at. They're just babies. And that's equivalent, according to the University of Arkansas, which is a big chicken state, that's equivalent to a human newborn gaining 660 pounds in the first 2 months of life. So
Oh,
they're
wow.
so huge. Their breasts are so huge that they can't even stand up. And you go in any chicken house and their legs are splayed out underneath them. They can't walk. A lot of them are on their backs. They have heart attacks. That's really common. So that's a problem with broiler chickens. And then I can tell you about laying hens and beef cattle and dairy cows. I don't know if you want to hear all of that, but it,
You could share a couple of examples, I think, of the dairy and egg industry, especially because I feel like that's an area where you still see people thinking it's not so bad, right? Because you're not, you don't need to kill a chicken for eggs, technically, right? You don't need to kill a cow for dairy, but it's still a very exploitive and terrible industry. So if you don't mind sharing a few facts that you uncovered about those, I think that would be really helpful for the audience who may not be familiar with that.
right. Well, I think most people know that the 300 plus million male chicks that are useless for egg production that are hatched each year are ground up alive or smothered each year. So that's a pretty common fact. Um, More than half of the laying hens in the country are still caged in battery cages, and that means 6 to 8 birds crammed into a cage the size of a microwave. They peck each other in frustration, so they're debeaked with a hot blade after they're hatched, and they stand on sloping wire floors with their sensitive feet, which cut into their feet, and they get osteoporosis because they experience calcium depletion from laying so many unnaturally so many eggs. One of the things that really affects me is that the escapees that get out of the cage somehow fall into the waste pits. And uh, I haven't done this myself, but I've seen plenty of documentation of it. In the waste pits, they get sucked into the mire and they suffocate. But sometimes you'll just see their little heads sticking out and they're still alive, but it's like they're in concrete because
Oh.
it's so thick. Um, as far as dairy cows go, um, dairy cows would normally produce less than 2 gallons of milk a day to feed their calves. It's funny, I was out to lunch the other day with somebody who asked me about dairy cows and why do they produce calves? Because most people don't know that they have to produce calves in order to give milk.
Yeah.
So anyway, they produce less than 2 gallons a day to feed those calves. And today in mega dairies, they produce 6 to 7 gallons, and at peak times, twice that amount. So that's 7 times what they would normally produce. So they're pushed so far, so hard metabolically that they're slaughtered at 3 to 5 years of age.
Mm.
And we encountered dairy cows with serious mastitis, which is an inflammation of the udder. Excuse me. And at this one mega dairy, they had a razor-like device that they just used to cut off a portion of the nipple, which is an excruciating procedure. And they didn't use anything like analgesics or anything like that. Um, they suffer lameness from standing on urine and manure-soaked concrete. And then I'll just tell you a little bit about the male calves, which there's not a big market for. They're auctioned because they have no use in producing milk. They're auctioned for veal, bob veal, which is slaughtered at 1 to 30 days of age for lunch meat and hot dogs, or milk-fed veal, which people know are kept in crates and can never turn around. They're shipped long distances to calf ranches where they're raised for cheap hamburger if they survive the transport. They're sold for rendering to be turned into tallow and grease and animal feed. Or as we found on the farms that we investigated, they're just simply abandoned, left to starve to death, shot, have their are beaten to death. The workers called it head bashing, or were buried alive. So those are some of the consequences of the dairy industry.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And yeah, these things are hard to hear, but I feel like it's so important to talk about these things because a lot of people are not aware. And it's so important that people realize what's happening behind the scenes because it's terrible on so many levels. And also the health, right? There's also the health impact on this as well. People have a lot of misinformation about nutrition. And I'm always directing people to nutritionfacts.org and Dr. Michael Greger's work and Forks Over Knives, because there's a lot of information out there that science proves that eating animal products is not as healthy as it was once marketed, right? There's a lot more data out there. And not to mention the mass production of all of this, again, making the animals grow faster than they are designed to grow, right? Because they have to meet these huge demands on the industry. And yeah, I can't imagine. It's it's just unimaginable the statistics of all the pigs that get slaughtered each day. What was it again that you had said?
Well, at the one operation I visited, it was 35,000 a
Thir-
day.
35,000 a day. Yeah, like I can't even imagine a day. Like that's just like it's and not on also on top of that is the workers, right? A lot of people don't even think about that, right? And they're mistreated as well. And they
Yeah.
don't have many rights either, which you talk about in your book as well. And so, yeah, there's just so much on there. We could go for hours on that. But thank you again for sharing some of those statistics that you found. And I want to shift now in a different direction because this book isn't just about all of that. It's about your own personal experiences. You had challenges with seeking out a diagnosis for a rare medical condition. You were seeing so many professionals. You also went through treatment for breast cancer at the age of 35. All of these things very grueling and difficult to go through. And you also did all this work at the same time. So, can you share what that was like while doing this work?
Well, sure. The neurological problem, it's a visual processing problem where I see the world is made up of dots. It's
Hmm.
pixelated, and that's fine because that's all I've ever known. What wasn't fine was that I kind of got to the point where I felt like I had dyslexia of the world, where I was
Mm.
confused, things didn't make sense. It was like looking in a funhouse mirror. And it went on for years and years and years. And I knew something was wrong, but all the doctors kept telling me there's nothing wrong with you. Get out of here. Because I went to eye doctors, I went to neuro doctors, I went to neuro ophthalmologists, I went to endocrinologists, I went to anybody who would consider seeing me. But turns out that the diagnosis for that debilitating disorder didn't happen until about 4 years ago because the disorder wasn't established in the medical literature until 10 years ago. It's a rare,
Oh, wow.
rare disorder that was only identified 10 years ago. So I was going to doctors who had never heard of this, and they were just telling me there's nothing wrong with you. So it was extremely challenging, but I managed to cope somehow, and it was a real relief to get the diagnosis because, you know, you start blaming yourself for things that everybody tells you are your fault because
Yeah.
they say there's nothing wrong with you. And so I had a mantra in my head, why are you doing this to yourself? Whereas I wasn't doing it to myself. So anyway, that was a great relief to get that diagnosis, and that diagnosis comes at the book's climax. As far as the breast cancer goes, that happened about the time that I had that terrible boss, and I knew that all these hogs were being boiled alive and everything, and he wouldn't let me do anything about it. And so I said to a colleague, I'm so stressed out, it will be amazing if I don't get breast cancer. And 6 months later, I had it. So,
Wow.
yeah. And I was treated with chemotherapy and radiation and all the stuff that you have to go through. And I just kept going. I took leave from HSUS from that terrible boss and took medical leave, but they didn't know I was secretly flying around the country documenting more and more violations because it had to be done. And I did it because I couldn't not. That's the only reason I continued, because somebody had to do it. Somebody had to stop these terrible violations. So,
The doctors were gaslighting you and, telling you that you were making it up, right? Like, well, there's nothing wrong with you when and I'm sure it's frustrating for them because they're trying to diagnose something and they don't know what it is. But I feel like instead of saying, "Oh, there's something wrong with you," they should say, we don't know what this is." But it's like they have to push the blame onto you. And I'm really sorry that you had to go through that.
yeah, thank you. They kept looking in my eyes, and it's a brain thing. They can't see what's going on in my brain. So they did the
Yeah.
best they could, I suppose. Yeah,
Well, I'm glad that you were able to find a diagnosis. And it's crazy how took so long for them to figure out what it was. But again, I guess they never even knew what to categorize it until just recently. So
right. Right.
you shared a little bit that you felt like you this was something you had to do. How were you able to do this? Like, how were you able to find that energy during your cancer treatment to continue doing this? Like, it must have been a lot.
I mean, it was really hard. I mean, I remember my eyes were burning out of my head. One night I was so sick I couldn't even get to the drugstore to get uh, ibuprofen. I was so sick in my hotel room. And one
Mhm.
place I ended up in the hospital because they thought I had a blood clot in my lungs, which is a potentially deadly result of radiation and chemotherapy. It wasn't, but and there I
Mhm.
was in the middle of South Dakota in a hospital getting tested for a blood clot in my lungs. I mean, I just put one foot in front of the next and in front of the other and just soldiered on. It had to be done. I had no choice. You would have done the same thing, Jennifer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, thankfully I haven't had the health experiences that you've had, but it's like the work that I'm doing and my mission with the Confident Vegan and that vegan morning show that I do with Kimberly. Like, I work a day job. I have stuff going on with my family, but I find the time somehow to do all of these things because it's so important. There's something bigger than me pushing me forward. Like, I have to do this. So when I talk to friends or family and I'm telling them all the different things that I'm working on, and they're like, how can you do, like, I don't understand how you find the time. Aren't you like tired? Yes. But I have to do it. Right. And so I can, through my own experience, understand that, like, there's all this important information that I'm aware of, and I love having guests like you on my channel because I want to share other stories of vegans. I want to share I'm very big on women's empowerment as well and boundary setting. I'm a recovering people pleaser. And so I've had to fight and claw my way to be the person who I am. And yeah, sometimes you just have to do things that other people can't understand. Because yeah, it does look difficult, but it's just so important. It's like you have to do it. So yeah, through
Right.
my own way, I can understand that.
Right. You got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. And I'm so glad that you're here with me having this conversation. Do you have any tips or just any words of encouragement for anyone who's watching who's also dealing with a debilitating health condition? What are something you feel could be helpful in their journey through this?
Well, don't do what I did, which is blame yourself. Don't blame yourself because it's not your fault. And
Yeah.
just treat yourself with love and loving kindness and respect, which becomes apparent by the time you get to the end of the book that I've changed dramatically. You
Hmm.
just have to treat yourself with loving kindness. Be gentle with yourself. Yeah.
That can be really, really hard.
Uh-huh.
And it's something that I've been getting better at too as part of my own healing journey. And yeah, it's so hard. We're our own worst enemies, and it's so hard to be like it's easier to be kinder to other people
Oh, absolutely.
than to ourselves. And yeah, I think that's really important advice to share for viewers. I want to share just a quick story in just how crazy the medical industry can be. I have been vegan for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years. No, yeah, 9 years. Yeah, 9 years because I was a 2017. So 9 years. In April will be my vegan anniversary. And I've never had any like vitamin deficiency. So a couple years ago, I went for my annual doctor checkup and I had a different doctor. And I was low on iron. I was anemic. So she prescribed to me, a supplement to take, ferrous sulfate, which wasn't animal derived. And I took it for a few months. And then when the prescription ran out, I figured, okay, she just wanted me to take it for a few months, but then I saw a refill added to my pharmacy. So I sent her a message and I was like, hey, how long do I need to take this for? And her response was, as long as you are vegan.
Wow.
So I wanted to say a lot of things to her in my message, but I didn't. And what I said was there are other ways to get iron sources as a vegan. And then I never saw her again. And then it took me a while to find another general practitioner. And finally I did. And this one understood what it was like to work with vegans. And she even said, yeah, there's other sources like greens and other ways. And I have been I found another supplement that I've been taking, and my blood work came back that I wasn't deficient in any vitamins or iron. And so with all of that, I just want to say like, there's other doctors who have other information, and there's if something doesn't resonate with you, I feel like it's so important to get a second opinion because if a doctor is not in alignment with your values and is supportive of your choices and also knowledgeable, like I feel like that's also important, like someone who's knowledgeable with working with vegans. And so now that's becomes a way, like when it comes to certain like a general practitioner, like that's my thing now. It's like, I want to know what their experience and understanding is with working
Right.
with vegans.
Right. That's great that you found somebody that is willing to work with you. that way.
I have hope that now that there is more information about whole food, plant-based, and you have the China study out there, it's more talked about. I feel like the newer doctors that are coming out there's an opportunity for them to not necessarily be set in their ways with old ways of nutrition. So I have hope that in time, as more of this information is readily accessible, that there will be more support and understanding.
Right. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, is there an excerpt in your book that you would like to share with the audience?
Sure. Let me get it here. Um, I'll just read a few paragraphs. Um, I'll start at the end of one section, which just
Okay.
talks about some hogs that were subjected to the weather while they're being trucked, and then I'll get into how that affected me. So
Okay.
it just says, a worker was talking to me about hogs that, well, he said, when the hogs, come off the truck, they're solid as a block of ice, said a worker at that plant. Sometimes they'd be so froze, you'd have to take a hot water hose to thaw them apart. The employee described finding live, frozen hogs in the piles of dead. I took my axe chopper and chopped them to death, hit them in the head. I told my supervisor that they'd been frozen alive and that I killed them. He said, "Oh, that's fine." Looking back, I wish I could have cried or even raged about the animal victims as I recorded these brutal accounts, these litanies of horror. But I couldn't. My feelings were frozen, buried deep inside me. I knew in my head that the crimes I was documenting were horrific, but I couldn't make the leap from my head to my heart. Instead, I just did the next right thing, putting one foot in front of the other, interviewing, listening, taping, transcribing, and ultimately turning these shameful admissions, these confessions of sins, into declarations and affidavits to be signed by the perpetrators themselves. It's not surprising then that at night I would dream about farm animal abuse. In one all too vivid dream, I was a shackled hog on a bloody kill floor, screaming loudly, but no one could hear my cries over the din of the disassembly line. Just as the sticker was about to plunge his knife into my throat, I abruptly awoke, gasping for air. Thus, it follows that when not on the road investigating, or in my office transcribing, I invariably found myself waiting patiently in doctors' offices. First, it was for shortness of breath. Later, it was for a persistent lump in my throat. And finally, I was literally doubled over with abdominal pain. It would always seem to be something. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was stuffing the atrocities down my throat and that they had to come out some way.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for reading that.
Sure.
I love whenever I have authors on, I like when they can share an excerpt of their book so people can get a sample of it. So it is such powerful writing, and I highly recommend anyone watching go pick this book up. It is such a page turner. Gail, you are such an inspiration for me. I really look up to you and look forward to finishing the book. And yeah, I can't wait to share it with others.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Before we wrap up, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, there's a few ways. One of the really good ways is to reach out to Humane Farming Association, and their website is hfa.org. There's also my website, which is my name, gaileisnitz.com. I'm on Instagram at Gail Eisnitz, LinkedIn and Facebook, Gail Eisnitz.
Okay,
So the
great.
best
And
way
I'll
is through those first two websites.
Okay, great. What I'll do is I'll include the links to the websites and also your social media So viewers, I'll put that all below the notes in this video so people can connect with you easily. Well, Gail, I want to thank you again for joining me, taking time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation with me. I'm really looking forward to finishing your book, and I highly recommend anyone watching it to please go get it. All right,
Thank
Gail.
you.
Thank you again for joining me, and thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye for now.